Here we are. I'm back. I just wanted to open up my Chromebook because I don't know, it's kind of hard to see because it's kind of bright. I have this Chromebook turned up kind of bright screen here, but this is a spreadsheet. So a spreadsheet shows you, and it helps calculate all kinds of formulas. One of my formulas is a formula that will show me exactly how much it costs to hire a certain number of musicians. So an octet, that's 8 musicians. That's my example here. We're going to hear that Schubert octet. You can go ahead and listen to that link. You can stop the video at any point, by the way, and go ahead and listen to the examples we're talking about. So the octet, I'm looking at this, and I'm seeing that if we do only 3 rehearsals, and we do 2.5-hour rehearsals, they're a little less expensive than a 3-hour rehearsal. But that 2.5-hour rehearsal, let's say we do 3 of them, it's going to cost us close to $10,000 to hire 8 musicians to play those 3 rehearsals. If we do 4 rehearsals that are each 2.5 hours long, so that's a total of 10 hours of rehearsal on that piece of music, and probably throwing in some other pieces that will use that same orchestration, that same instrumentation, the same 8 musicians. We are going to cost over $12,000. And if we have 5 rehearsals, if it's a little difficult piece of music, it's going to be even more. It's probably going to be around $15,000 just for 8 musicians. So that would be, but that's actually, for an orchestra, that's a small budget because, as we get larger and larger, you go to a symphony, to hear a symphony in Symphony Hall, Boston Symphony, one of the best orchestras in the world. They've got probably 80 or 90 musicians on the stage, or maybe even more, maybe 100 musicians, depending on how many instruments the composer required by, when they wrote the music, they envisioned it in their ear as having certain types of different sounds. And so they wanted, oh, I hear a saxophone. I have to put a saxophone in there. We got to hire a saxophone player to show up and add that to the usual musicians who are string players and clarinets and trombones and trumpets and, timpani players. So, but let's see. Now, if we go up to a medium-sized orchestra, say that would be somewhere, for me, that would be like between 20 and 30 musicians, maybe. So 20 to 30 musicians, let's see, that would be, somewhere around between, say, 28,000 to 53,000, maybe a little bit more. Again, depending on how many rehearsals. Let's see. Do we have any pieces that have that number of musicians? So yeah, I'm going to show you some examples of different pieces of music also that use these different size groupings. Now I could do a very small rendition of Benjamin Britten's Simple Symphony. And of course, all these composers that we're talking about, they're all queer. Schubert, we know historically was, well, actually, we're not absolutely positive about some of these people in history because they didn't come out and go, hey, I'm gay. No, I mean, some of them were kind of in the closet, but we know from the fact that they had relationships with people of their same gender or their same sex that they were, in fact, having, a life that was the same gender. Benjamin Britten was a great gay composer, and he wrote something called the Simple Symphony. It's all strings. So now, again, just like the Copland that I talked about before, we could play the Simple Symphony with a string quintet with just 5 musicians, 1 violin, 2 violins, a viola, a cello, and a double bass. But we might want to play it with an actual symphonic sound. So we want to have 3, 4, 5, or 6, or even 7 strings on each part. It's like 7 violins, number 1 violins, maybe 6 second violins, maybe 6 violas, maybe 5 cellos, maybe 3 double bass players. So add that all together, you've got 30 some odd musicians, and now you're talking about a budget of around $50,000 to do it and do it really well. Although actually Simple Symphony is pretty simple. So we could maybe do it for that $30,000 budget. Um, and again, we can combine it with other pieces of music that use that same orchestration to create a full concert. So the full concert's going to cost $30,000-$40,000 to put it on. That's how much money we have to raise. Raising money is another subject. We could talk about that some other time. Another piece of music that might use the similar sort of size orchestration might be another piece by Benjamin Britten, the variations on a theme of Frank Bridge. You can find links to all these things down there. I don't think I put the link in yet. I'm going to actually go and look one up. Les Illuminations, the illuminated for strings with a soprano. So you have to hire a singer for this one. We have some great singers that we know, by the way, that are going to join us for some of these concerts. We could do for a string orchestra, we can take any string quartet or string quintet and just play it with more of those same instruments, by the way. A lot of the Baroque music by composers like George Friedrich Handel or Corelli, they were both queer, and they wrote pieces that can be adapted for smaller string orchestras, because that's like what they wrote for. And then you get into the larger works. You get into one of my favorite composers, a 20th century composer, Corigliano, great composer. Leonard Bernstein, who wrote his first symphony called The Age of Anxiety, which we're going to talk about. We talked about it a little bit in the first episode, but we're going to explore that a little bit more. And another favorite of mine, Frederick Delius, a 19th century composer. These are great composers, and I want to make sure that you listen to the examples that I've put in there, because that's what makes this little talk more complete. As a matter of fact, don't forget, you can always stop this video, go and listen to the examples we're talking about. I'm going to see if I can label some of these things in the captions so that you can see when to cut away to your video links. So now what does it cost to play? Let's look at my spreadsheet again here. I'm going to take a look at Leonard Bernstein. So let's see, Leonard Bernstein. Here it is, Age of Anxiety. If we do it in 4 rehearsals, which is kind of not enough because it's a really challenging piece of music, but that would be close to $132,000 to rehearse that piece and put on a really good concert of it. In fact, it'd be better if we did it closer to $140,000, $150,000 budget, because then we can have the 5 rehearsals, and that would be really super. I would rather, the whole thing of aging grapes to make really fine wine. I would rather wait until we raise lots of money and really be able to do a better concert. I want to hire the best queer musicians that are available. We might need to import them from other places. We sometimes have to bring in, maybe we don't have enough, transgender cellists that live in the Boston area. We bring one in from West Hartford, or from New York. So we have to pay their travel. I think I talked about that in the first episode of Tuning Up the World. So anyway, let's take a break here and talk about giving some money to the orchestra. Okay? I want to make sure that you don't just give money, but subscribe to this video, please, because that helps our algorithm. And make sure you tell your friends about it too, because I want to make sure that everybody knows that we're doing something really kind of unique. Remember, I Googled this when I started out, and there were no other transgender orchestras in the world. We are the first and only group that does this. And so I want to make sure that people know about it because we're doing something very unique. There are, by the way, we know there are lovely queer orchestras, um, but not not any, very few, I should say, that are actually fully professional. Um, so our level of performance is going to be super high. It's going to be the best, most incredible performances that you were going to remember for the rest of your life, because we are not, and we have a process for making sure that every musician, you can't just be queer and play an instrument. You have to know how to play it really, really, really well, and you have to compete to get in. You have to play an audition. We have a very specific, it is done on the basis of the quality of your playing. You have to be really good at your craft to get into this group. So if you're not up to snuff, and I'm a very tough judge because I've been in this business my whole life. Gunther Schuller, who was a great composer and conductor, and the president of New England Conservatory where I went to school, just before he died, he called me on the phone and he said my old dead name because I hadn't transitioned yet. And he said, I know that you are conducting orchestras, and I want to make sure that you keep on supporting orchestral symphonic music. It's really, really important to keep this music alive. And so I took his message, stuck it away in my head. And then when I decided, oh, I need to transition, I need to become my authentic self, I realized that I needed to create this group that would be um, in keeping with Gunther Schuller's idea of keeping the orchestral art and tradition and history alive so that future generations will be able to uh, hear what we've been hearing, um, and compare it with contemporary music, compare it with pop music, compare it with hip hop. I mean, it's not better, it's just different, but it tells us a lot about where we were and where we come from. And the other thing is that symphonic music is a very highly developed, crafted music. Um, it's 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 very special because it's not just a steady beat or whatever. It molds, it changes. It's like the earth. It doesn't stay the same. It evolves, especially after the romantic period of time, which was reflected in the music that people wrote. Um, they wrote. We always say that they wore their heart on their sleeve because they didn't hide their emotions the way people in the classical era sort of everything was just perfect, la di da. Mozart, they played for aristocrats and everything had to always just be perfect because if it wasn't, you'd get your head cut off. um, but nowadays, as we get more contemporary, people started to express their own real feelings, their passions, their loves, their hates. Um, they would they would show. I mean, a lot of people feel that Beethoven's music, for instance, he was one of the first of the romantic composers. That he was painting pictures of crashing, thunder clouds, Sturm und Drang we call it, and then the quiet and the sun coming out and all this kind of stuff, and this is kind of imagery in the music, which later on in later periods it became really paintings. It was paralleled with the art um, of that same period called the Impressionistic period. In music, we had Impressionistic music too. It was designed to give you the impression of the sea, like Debussy wrote La Mer, which is the sea. Um, Ravel. Now Debussy wasn't queer, so we're not going to play La Mer, but we might play the music of Maurice Ravel, who was another impressionistic, kind of on the cusp of being more contemporary. And so Ravel, we will play, and we will hear the impressions of la cloche, the clock, and things like that. So there's fun things that we are going to hear in the music.